NCAA Final Four is American sport at its best, representing a perfect blend of drama, grace, effort, and team play. Each year it renews itself, breaking free of winter's hold with the first breakthrough of spring. While the tournament has grown into a major media event, it remains essentially what it has been for decades, a series of games played by young men to determine the best college basketball team in the land. Rich Clarkson has been making images like these, memories, frozen moments. A single frame can communicate the essence of a man or a moment. Sometimes a single frame can tell a story of joy or heartache, failure or redemption. After 50 years behind the camera at the Final Four, photographer Rich Clarkson still seeks that perfect frame. What does a dynasty look like? Some would argue it is capturing the players at their best. Others say the image should be iconic and heavy with symbolism. No one would say, however, that a dynasty could be captured prematurely. Yet Rich Clarkson may have done exactly that in 1964, when UCLA began the greatest championship run in college basketball.
One of the things that I was doing at the time, which lots of photographers do today, and that is to use a telephoto lens to photograph the other end of the court, which produced a very different look, a different kind of picture. I was doing that a lot, and Walt Hazzard was bringing the ball down court, a lot of cutting back and forth.
Walt Hazzard was interesting because he was really the first East Coast guy to come out and play that style of basketball with the flashy passing. You know, he was magic before magic in his own way, and we'd never seen that out here.
With Walt Hazzard providing the flash and fire, UCLA beat Duke 98-83. Late that night, Clarkson and veteran Sports Illustrated photographer Hy Peskin, who had also worked the game, were in competition for the cover in a Kansas City photo lab.
Hy couldn't help but every 30 minutes getting up and going back into the photo lab to try to look over their shoulder and say, "Hy, please wait out in the other room." Finally, about 3 o'clock in the morning, he made another one of those in there, and Hy comes back out and says, "They've picked the cover." He says, "It's blurry, it's grainy, it's a little out of focus, and it was made by that son of a..." And so the fact checker, Frank DeFord, and I looked at each other and died laughing as Hy went out the door. And I think that was the last assignment that Hy Peskin ever did for the magazine, and it was my first cover.
It was instantly recognizable as a very different basketball picture. It was taken with a long lens. For a photographer, I of course knew how hard it is to do that. Secondly, it was such a good way to look at the game. And I remember thinking to myself, I've got to learn how to do that.
I know that cover, I think, symbolized everything about that team because it all started with Hazzard. You know, in many ways, Hazzard was the signature player of the whole UCLA dynasty. That's what got UCLA its national attention. That's what got people like Alcindor and Walton and in later years to become interested in UCLA.
Lou Alcindor hit the Westwood campus in 1965.
A long way from home when I came out here. My freshman and sophomore years, I was pretty homesick. When I played my sophomore year at UCLA, we were undefeated that year and really surprised everybody. It was 4 sophomores and a junior. And we beat everybody.
UCLA was perfect in 1967 and repeated as national champions the next season. Clarkson was there.
I could recall them all arriving and going into the locker room and not really thinking very much about it. And then here's the press corps all gathered around. And so as I was watching, the door opened and Lou Alcindor left wearing African robes.
I waited off anything flamboyant until we had proven ourselves. Just had a night to get a little ethnic on. I went to the game in my blazer, but after the game, this is my time.
In 1969, UCLA was expected to ride the dominance of Alcindor to yet another title. When the Bruins won their third consecutive championship, no one was more relieved than the only three-time winner of the Final Four's Most Outstanding Player Award.
I really felt unburdened. I'd lived up to everybody's hyperinflated expectations and done it the way that Coach Wooden felt was important that we do it. The picture of me and my dad is especially poignant because my dad nowadays is dealing with senile dementia, and he can't remember those times. Just the joy that I had in the moment and being able to share that with my dad and mom were very special for me.
Many thought Clarkson's image of the shy center smiling in the grace of his father's pride would mark the end of UCLA's dominance. But John Wooden's teams went on to win 5 of the next 6 NCAA tournaments. At least one player chafed under the coach's iron will.
My dream in life was to play for John Wooden, the greatest coach of all time. I think I was sort of looking for a dad. Of course, Coach was looking for a point guard, and we were kind of ships passing in the night. I kind of sat on the bench for 3 years, and it was a really bitter disappointment for me. Coach seemed kind of a distant and disapproving figure.
He didn't speak to me for 25 or 30 years after he graduated. Avoided me completely. It wasn't until he started thinking about that, the things that I learned from Coach is what's helping me become successful.
I thought I had to call him at least and say thank you, and gosh, he was sitting right there by the phone, picked it up right away, and asked me to come see him. We spent about 6 hours together that day, and he's really become one of my dearest friends in the world.
For him to feel that I didn't like him was so wrong, because there was nothing about him that I didn't like.
Another UCLA recruit who felt the wrath of Wooden was Sidney Wicks.
Sidney was a prodigy. He was almost a LeBron James type of high school player in L.A. Everybody knew him when he was a sophomore in high school. You know, he's already a great prospect, and you know, Sidney had a hard time.
It took me a long time to get up the nerve to go up to Johnny Wooden and say, hey, Coach, listen, I think I should be playing more. Help me understand this.
He'd say, Coach, you know I'm better than Shaq. You know I'm better than Kenny. How come I'm not in? And I said, well, I know that. You know, it's just a shame that you're letting him beat you out because you are better. But until you learn it's a team game and not a game for Sidney Wicks, that's exactly what's going to happen.
And if you understand that, you'll be okay. And if you don't, it might be a problem now. So I said, I'm going to go home and try to digest it and then come back tomorrow. And now it's up to me.
And then his junior year, it just sort of clicked in, and he became a great player and eventually the best player in the country.
Wicks was voted the most outstanding player at the 1970 Final Four. A year later, in his All-American senior season, as the final seconds ticked away in a 68-62 win over Villanova for UCLA's 5th straight championship, Wicks had a message for his coach.
That was my moment. I was like so overwhelmed with emotions, and I had in my mind to walk over to the coach and say how I felt about playing for him. And I was able to do it, which was cool.
And he said, congratulations, Coach, on another championship. I think he said, and then he turned and went away again and got about halfway out. And then he turned and came back on. He leaned down and said, Coach, you know you're really something.
I'm watching it, and, you know, I don't know what's being said, but I know it's a wonderful picture.
You're just unbelievable, and this experience has been unbelievable, and I just want you to know that it was an honor and a pleasure to play for you.
Seeing that photo makes me recall it happening and how he brought tears in my eyes just by saying that one remark. That photograph always meant a lot to me. It's really my favorite photograph.
It was me coming from my heart, and it's very pleasing for me to hear that it affected him the way it did.
Sometimes the image of a dynasty is revealed in the face of a master, humbled by the gratitude of a pupil.